I'm Teresa.
And I'm Callista, and this is Terrifyingly Typical True Crime. We're starting a new true crime theme when celebrity fandom turns to murder. And this is our first episode on when celebrity adoration goes terribly wrong. What is it about celebrities that captivates people, and what turns a mild obsession into a murderous rage? Park Dietz, a criminologist and forensic psychiatrist who has testified as an expert witness in the trials of Jeffrey Dahmer and John Hinckley Jr., said that people have always been hardwired to worship something. People use celebrities as entertainment and a form of escapism, and this level of fan is healthy and normal. However, Dietz found in a study conducted in the 1980s that celebrities who were perceived as sweet, pleasant, and non threatening drew many more stalkers than other celebrities who were deemed as nasty or sarcastic. Jim Horan, a clinical psychologist and author of books and academic studies exploring the psychology of fandom, also stated that celebrity worship culture has existed forever within the world of entertainment. Whether it be in genres such as sports, music, comedy, or content creators, we are constantly bombarded with the lives of those who provoke our interest and provide us entertainment.
When does fandom turn to obsession and murder? Celebrity fans usually start with a harmless fondness for a celebrity, but then some type of event or disturbance in that person's life, be it a loss of a job or a relationship ending, can push the fondness to the next level of celebrity worship, where fans begin to feel a personal attachment to a celebrity. This can happen when a celebrity responds to a letter a fan wrote. The fan tends to exaggerate this response, thinking they have a personal connection to the celebrity and that they are special. This behavior does not always turn the fan into a stalker, but the obsession becomes unhealthy. They may start to withdraw from friends and family and devote a lot of their time focusing on their favorite celebrity. The next escalation involves the fan trying to get closer to their celebrity crush. Horan compares this behavior to the extreme behavior of a drug addict, using money earmarked to pay bills instead being used to pay for things like celebrity memorabilia, which immediately makes me think of sports fanatics. Or obsessed fans may use the money to try and get closer to the celebrity, like buying a bus or plane ticket to try and locate the celebrity. Horan's research indicates that there are not just two types of fans: normal, healthy fans and crazy fanatics, but there is a continuum, and oftentimes what is happening in a person's personal life can drastically alter their fandom. Fans that appear on the high end of the continuum are most likely to be suffering from a number of potential mental disorders.
Most celebrity stalkers exhibit many of the same concerns and follow a similar pattern of behavior. They are often suffering from a mental illness, experiencing a diminished mental capacity, or have a family history of mental illness, and are usually described as loners who have difficulty maintaining relationships in real life. Additionally, they are most likely between the ages of 20 to 34. They start out as fans, and then, in the hope of forming a greater connection, they may begin to write letters and send various communications to said celebrity. Receiving some type of response often instigates a further obsession, and they may make plans to try and meet their target in person. But if they are ignored or rebuffed, they often act out angrily or violently. According to Roche modeling, which uses a mathematical model to analyze how well a test measures a person's ability, this scale detects celebrity worship at three different stages. Quote, in the first stage, low worship, respondents are content with individualistic behaviors, such as watching and reading about a celebrity. Individuals in this initial stage are motivated by sensation seeking and entertainment. In the next stage, intermediate celebrity worship takes on a broader social character. In the third stage, high celebrity worship, individuals display excessive empathy with the celebrity's successes and failures, over identify with the celebrity, and obsessively follow the details of a celebrity's life. End quote. Additionally, quote, insecure persons feel socially rejected and are motivated to seek approval from a celebrity or because they are emotionally distant and wish to retaliate against a perceived wrongdoing, end quote.
Overall, most celebrity fascination is harmless. Jason Anderson, arts writer for the Grid newspaper, asserts that the entertainment industry relies, quote, heavily on the energetic devotees to drive demand, end quote, on whatever the celebrity is involved in, from their namesake perfume to their latest movie role. Though we did not specifically search it out, we would argue that with the advent of social media and constant celebrity content from sources like Instagram and TikTok, rather than a fan becoming obsessive and turning the obsession into something harmful towards the celebrity, the opposite happens, and the fan's obsession causes the fan to turn the obsession onto themselves and their perceived lacking, being not pretty enough, thin enough, rich enough, etc. Though this is a long-standing problem, our constant evolution of having the world at our fingertips, literally with a smartphone, there can be too many comparisons to make people feel like they just aren't enough.
But today, we're talking about the case of a fan who didn't turn their obsession inward, because this case of celebrity obsession not only proved deadly, but it was also the catalyst for the first law in the US that made stalking illegal, after it was too late for the victims who had come before. Let's dive in. Rebecca Schaeffer was busying herself around her West Hollywood apartment on the morning of July 18th, 1989, while she waited for a messenger to deliver the script for Francis Ford Coppola's upcoming and final installment of the Godfather saga, The Godfather 3. Rebecca was set to audition for the part of Mary Michael Corleone's daughter later that day. This was a big deal. Actresses Julia Roberts and Winona Ryder were also on the shortlist for this career defining part. So when Rebecca heard a knock at her door, she answered, assuming it was the messenger with the coveted script. She had no way of checking because even though the apartment did have an intercom, unfortunately, it wasn't working. Instead of the messenger, though, Rebecca was met with dark haired, self proclaimed superfan, 19-year-old Robert John Bardo. Robert told Rebecca that he was her biggest fan. He showed her a letter and autograph photo he had received from her. Rebecca, not jaded by many years in the industry, was kind and didn't shut the door in his face.
Which she obviously had every right to do. I don't answer my door anymore because when I have in the past, it is either somebody selling something or a local churchgoer who feels comfortable knocking on a stranger's door and asking me if I go to church and have I been saved.
In both cases, we're not buying what you're selling, my friend. Apparently, Robert didn't realize that this wasn't a personal invitation to seek her out or anything more than a celebrity responding to a fan. He later said that she told him she was getting ready for an audition, shook his hand, and told him, please take care, which I feel like is more than most fans could hope for after harassing a celebrity at their home. Robert left, then went to a deli to have breakfast. But while reliving their interaction, he decided he was unsatisfied with his face to face meeting with his celebrity crush.
Robert returned to Rebecca's home, knocked again. She again opened the door, still expecting the messenger with the script. Robert recounted that Rebecca said, "You came to my door again, and I don't have much time." Robert later recalled that he thought this was a cold hearted way to treat a fan. He told Rebecca he forgot to give her something, and then removed a gun from his waistband and shot Rebecca once in the chest. She screamed out, "Why? Why?" Robert stared at Rebecca's fallen body for a minute, then fled the scene. Neighbors heard screams and rushed towards Rebecca's apartment. A neighbor called 911 and an ambulance arrived and rushed Rebecca to Cedar Sinai Hospital. She died 30 minutes later. Now that we've witnessed her tragic end, let's go back to how Rebecca got her start. Rebecca Lucille Schaeffer was born on November 6, 1967, in Eugene, Oregon. She was the only child of Benson, a psychologist, and Dana, a writer and instructor. Rebecca grew up in Eugene and then moved to Portland, Oregon in her teens. Rebecca was originally interested in becoming a rabbi. I looked this up because I'm always curious when women were allowed to hold certain jobs.
Me too.
Sally Jane Crescent was the first woman ordained as a rabbi in the US in 1972. Many people commented on Rebecca's wholesome girl next door looks with her long curly brown hair and big eyes and suggested that she try modeling.
So she did. She started modeling at 14 and moved to New York at the age of 16, where there were more opportunities. However, her modeling career was short lived because she was only 5'7", and this was, ridiculously, considered too short to be a fashion model. Oh, how the fashion world loves to set impossible standards that few can meet.
Too freaking true.
Rebecca then started auditioning and landed a 6-month acting gig on the soap opera One Life to Live in 1984. Ever ambitious, she went to Japan in 1985 to try modeling there. But disappointed with the lack of options, she returned to New York to focus on acting. She landed a small role in Woody Allen's Radio Days, but most of her part was edited out of the final film. During this period of time, she also landed a spot on the cover of Seventeen magazine. When television producers in LA saw the cover, they contacted Rebecca's agent, who sent a demo of her Radio Days part. This would become Rebecca's big break because producers wanted to cast her in the role of Patty on the sitcom My Sister Sam, where she would play the younger sister of Pam Dauber's character Sam. For those too young to know, Pam Dauber rose to fame on the comedy sitcom Mark and Mindy in the late 1970s, where she played the human girlfriend to Robin Williams' Alien. Pam has also been married to Mark Harmon since 1987. My Sister Sam aired 44 episodes from 1986 to 1988, and Rebecca even lived with Pam for a short period of time at the beginning of the series. Pam looked out for Rebecca and gave her advice about navigating Hollywood. When Rebecca found her West Hollywood apartment, Pam was excited for her, but advised her to never put her real name on her mailbox. Unfortunately, Rebecca didn't heed this advice.
Not that this in any way would have stopped Robert.
No, I don't think that small effort to remain anonymous would have stood in Robert's way.
Unfortunately. Seeing Rebecca's smiling face on people's TV screens on a weekly basis grew Rebecca's fan base. She was the cover model on several magazines during this time and landed several small roles in movies such as The End of Innocence and scenes from the class struggle in Beverly Hills. Rebecca was dating film student Brad Sieberling at the time of her death. Sieberling would later become a director and producer, and who, again, because we find this kind of thing interesting, married actress Amy Brenneman in 1995.
Hollywood is incredibly insular. See the many Nepo babies, not that many of them are talented, so it is interesting to learn about all the connections.
You know, I think so. As for her killer, Robert John Bardo was the youngest of 7 children born to an American father and a Japanese mother. The family was dysfunctional. His father was an alcoholic, and reports vary regarding his mother's mental health issues. Robert suffered both physical and emotional abuse from his parents and at least one older sibling. The family moved around a lot due to his father's military career and settled in Tucson in 1983. Teachers described Robert as bright, but also a loner and socially awkward. One teacher described him as a ticking time bomb. Robert would write letters to his teachers threatening violence towards them and frequently mentioning suicide.
When the school met with his parents, they denied that he had any issues and refused to seek necessary counseling or psychiatric help on their teen's behalf. He did spend a week in a hospital where he was evaluated. However, that was all his parents would allow. Robert also said that he didn't need any help. It is interesting to note, though, that his mother apparently suffered from an undiagnosed mental condition, so denial apparently ran deep in the family. But to be fair, this was the early 1980s, and there was quite the stigma regarding mental health, even more so than today, and medical intervention was rarely sought. Robert's first obsession was with Samantha Smith. She was a peace activist who became famous at the age of 10 when she wrote a letter to Soviet leader Yuri Andropov. Andropov, or more likely one of his staff, responded to the letter and invited Samantha and her parents to visit the Soviet Union. They took Andropov up on his offer and spent several weeks in the Soviet Union. The press dubbed Samantha America's youngest ambassador. Robert then wrote Samantha several letters and even received a reply to one of them. Escalating his obsession, he stole money from his mother and purchased a bus ticket to Maine to track Samantha down. Luckily, Robert's parents realized he had left, and anticipating where he had gone, they contacted authorities in Maine who were able to circumvent Robert before he located Samantha. Robert's unhealthy fascination with Samantha only ended when she and her father Arthur tragically died in a plane crash in 1985.
In high school, Robert fixated on one of his teachers and wrote her a 10-page letter stating his intent to kill himself. For this incident, he had a short stay in a foster home. However, that only lasted a very short period of time. He was then hospitalized for 1 month and was diagnosed as being severely emotionally handicapped. He did receive counseling in the hospital, but because mental health was not taken seriously in the 1980s,
Not that red flags still aren't missed today.
missed and or ignored, he was sent back to his parents who, in their quest to do nothing to help their obviously unstable teenager, got him no further help and allowed him to drop out of high school.
I feel like they are very much living in the hope that if we ignore his issues, maybe they'll go away. If only sticking our heads in the sand was an actual solution.
And of course, it never, ever is.
Hmm.
Without a high school diploma, Robert's job options were limited. He got a job at a local Jack in the Box as a janitor. When Robert wasn't working, having no friends or a girlfriend to spend time with, he spent his time at home, listening to music and watching TV. While viewing the limited TV channels available in the 1980s, Robert happened upon My Sister Sam. Robert immediately became obsessed with Rebecca, who he viewed as the ideal girl, wholesome and beautiful. He would record the episodes of My Sister Sam on VHS tapes and rewatch them over and over again.
In between rewatching episodes, Robert began writing letters to Rebecca. He received a response to one of his letters, which was signed Love Rebecca, along with an autographed photo. Robert didn't realize that these were not personally written missives from Rebecca and were most likely sent from her publicist or an assistant. He believed that he and Rebecca had a personal connection. Beyond cutting out photos of Rebecca that he kept in his room, in 1987, Robert boarded a bus from Tucson to Los Angeles and went to the Burbank studio where My Sister Sam was being filmed. He brought a teddy bear and flowers, but security, doing their job, turned him away. Security didn't think this visit to the studio was anything out of the ordinary, as fans often visit studios with the hope of meeting their celebrity crush. Disappointed, Robert returned to Tucson, but he was far from defeated. In 1988, he again took a bus to Los Angeles and again went to the Burbank studio. This time, instead of carrying a teddy bear or flowers, Robert brought a knife. He again tried to see Rebecca, but was again denied. Security officer John Eggers, who would later testify at Robert's trial, said he felt bad for Robert. He just seemed like a lovesick fan. Security officer Eggers actually drove Robert back to his hotel and told him he should forget about Rebecca. He felt like he had done a good thing talking to and advising Robert. And if Robert had been in a better place, maybe that would have been enough.
But Robert's obsession didn't dull. On June 3rd, 1989, Scenes from the Class Struggle in Beverly Hills was released. This was a different type of role than the girl next door Rebecca played in My Sister Sam. There was a scene where Rebecca was in bed with a male co star. This infuriated Robert. He felt like Rebecca had become, wait for it, another Hollywood whore and was no longer innocent. He became enraged. He was now angry and felt that she was no longer a good girl.
I think I just felt my skin crawl.
You and me both. Dr. Chris Mahondy, a clinical police and forensic psychologist, stated that Robert's thinking was that Rebecca was his. She was no longer innocent and that he needed to permanently punish her by taking her life. Robert wrote to his sister telling her, I have an obsession with the unattainable. Robert began to make plans to visit Hollywood again, this time to end Rebecca's life. That's a lot right there. Maybe we can just marinate in the absurdity of this. Obviously, Robert was unwell. He had completely invented a non existent relationship with Rebecca. How fucking scary. When I see celebrities exiting a hotel or restaurant or walking down the freaking sidewalk and there are numerous paparazzi taking their photos, that's bad enough. The paparazzi directly feeds into the overzealous, overcomfortable, I need a piece of you mentality of fans. But generally, the paparazzi want a picture so they can sell it. Their goal is financial. Fans are different. They want a piece of the celebrity, a comment, a photo, an autograph. They feel entitled. They have seen you perform. They have your picture. With social media, it is so much worse. They can pretend like the celebrity is talking to them when they post something on Instagram or TikTok. I think people forget that celebrities are people. They don't owe you anything. They're providing a service that you enjoy, whether this is watching a movie they're in or listening to a song they sing. It's entertainment. They have provided what you watch or listen to, whatever performance they have provided. And that's the end. You are not owed anything. I think it needs to be looked at more transactionally. They provide a specific type of entertainment. You enjoy that song, show, whatever. End of transaction.
I'm not sure if it's the same in other countries, but in the US, I think we have this weird mentality where we idolize celebrities and then believe that by putting them on a pedestal, we are owed their gratitude. It's like we think that we've entered into some kind of deal with someone who has no idea we exist. Someone who is famous is in no way superior to someone who isn't, obviously not. They're just a person who is talented and financially rewarded for using that talent. I completely agree with you about the need for that level of distance and looking at appreciating their talent as a limited transaction. It's like any other kind of finite service that you pay for. You're not owed anything beyond that.
Too true.
Robert, though, did not realize that Rebecca didn't owe him anything. He said he was inspired by Arthur Jackson, who in 1982 went to the home of actress Teresa Saldana to kill her. Teresa was unlocking her car outside of her home when she was approached by a man who asked her if she was Teresa Saldana. She said she was, and he stabbed her repeatedly with a hunting knife. Fortunately, a delivery driver heard her screaming, and Hero of Heroes wrestled the knife away from Arthur and called paramedics. Teresa barely survived. She had heart and lung surgeries and a large blood transfusion. Arthur was convicted of attempted murder and inflicting great bodily harm. He was sentenced to the maximum at the time, which was 12 years in prison. But his sentence was reduced for good behavior and he was released in 1990. Arthur had previously called Teresa's agent and several studios to try and get her address. When that didn't work, he called Teresa's mother. How exactly he got her number isn't clear. Maybe she was in the phone book, but however he managed it, he was able to get Teresa's address by calling her mother while posing as director Martin Scorsese's assistant, saying he needed her address to contact her about a film role.
This seems really outlandish, but since Teresa had already starred in a Scorsese film, maybe her mother didn't think too much about the complete inappropriateness and weirdness of this call, which is beyond frightening.
It truly is. But why would her mother assume someone was impersonating an assistant who, I don't know, was planning to send a script to her or something? I think we're more aware of scams and stalkers than we used to be, so I can understand why she didn't question it. What's equally frightening is the fact that Arthur continued to torment Teresa while in prison, sending her threatening letters.
And I have to just say, what the fuck? Shouldn't someone at the prison have noticed this and stopped him? Maybe that's asking too much.
But prisons read prisoners' letters, don't they?
I mean, I thought they did. If not, they sure as hell should.
Yeah, so what? They saw that he was threatening the woman he stabbed and thought, yep, that's fine. But instead of hurling into a ball, as I would have wanted to do, Teresa went on to found the Victims for Victims organization, which lobbied for anti stalking laws. Unfortunately, though, it would take Rebecca's death in 1989 for California to take anti stalking seriously.
Unlike Ar- Unlike Arthur, Robert didn't call Rebecca's mother to get her address. Instead, he hired a private investigator, and they were able to easily obtain this by contacting the California Department of Motor Vehicles. Armed with her address, Robert attempted to purchase a gun. However, he mentioned his mental health struggles to the gun show employee, who refused to sell him a gun. Undeterred, he has talked his brother into purchasing a 357 Magnum for him for target practice. We can diss the brother a little here, I think. The family knew of Robert's unhealthy obsession with Rebecca, and they knew he struggled with his mental health. Why the hell would anyone agree to buy him a gun? Target practice my ass. Of course, this is America, and we certainly love our guns and don't like to question why anyone would need and or want one. It's our God-given right, damn it.
We really don't. God forbid we police people's guns rather than women's bodies.
How very timely and very true.
But I have to give props to the gun show employee who at least didn't sell Robert a weapon.
I mean, that's true. Anywho, Robert boarded yet another bus from Tucson to Los Angeles, this time with a gun loaded with hollow bullets. The letter and photograph he had received from Rebecca years earlier, a cassette tape he had used to record some of his favorite songs, including U2's Exit, which we will mention again when we get to the trial, and of course, Rebecca's address. Rebecca's death was a catalyst for California categorizing stalking as a felony. Robert had Rebecca's street address, but unaware of the actual apartment, he showed her picture to several people outside of her building. And kindly, dumb people that they were, they indicated which apartment was Rebecca's, which is freaking horrifying. Not just for celebrities, but for anyone. Pam Dauber said she was filled with rage because of how easily Robert was able to get Rebecca's address.
As we all should be. After shooting Rebecca, Robert fled the scene and took a bus to Tucson, which was where he lived with his parents. He was found the next day on a freeway on ramp in Tucson, really keeping a low profile as he yelled, "I killed Rebecca Schaeffer." He was then arrested and held on $1 million bail. Upon hearing of Rebecca's death, his sister, unaware that Robert had been arrested, called authorities and said she thought her brother might have killed Rebecca. She correctly suspected Robert's guilt because he had talked about his obsession with Rebecca and his plan to kill her in one of the letters he had sent his sister. Thinking along those same lines, Robert's brother and father said that when they heard of the murder, they looked through Robert's things to see if his gun was still in the house. Seeing that it wasn't, they said that's when they knew he had killed Rebecca.
It amazes me how freaking complicit Robert's family was. Really stand up humans looking out for the greater good. They knew of Robert's propensity for obsessive behavior with several celebrities and his long standing, and it was years he was obsessed with Rebecca, and they did nothing. His brother even bought the gun he used to stalk and murder Rebecca with. I honestly feel like there should have been, I don't know, an accessory to murder charge against the brother at least. And I guess the parents just live with the fact that by not getting intense mental health care for their son, they allowed this to happen.
Yeah, it's hard to look past the ways in which his brother, at the very least, facilitated Rebecca's murder. Yet it was Rebecca's family who ended up paying the ultimate price. But even though no one had stopped him from killing Rebecca, Robert wasn't going to get away with it because he was later extradited to California to stand trial for her murder. During Robert's trial, both his brother and sister testified on his behalf that he dropped out of high school to seek treatment for his mental health. However, we could not find specific information on when and where this supposed treatment was. As we already mentioned, Robert was unable to purchase the gun he used to kill Rebecca because of his mental health, so his brother purchased it for him. And while Robert's attorney argued that he was suffering from an unnamed mental condition, Deputy District Attorney Marcia Clark argued that Robert was not mentally ill, but in fact simply obsessed with Rebecca. Marcia Clark, who was 4 years away from prosecuting the case of O.J. Simpson for the first degree murders of his ex wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ronald Goldman, wanted to prove lying in wait along with first degree murder. This would ensure that if convicted, Robert would serve a life sentence without the possibility of parole. If the same image sprang to your mind, lying in wait doesn't mean someone is hiding in the bushes. It means they have a plan before the crime takes place. Judge Fulgoni agreed with DDA Clark that Robert had lain in wait and thought he may have undiagnosed schizophrenia.
Marcia Clark reviewed the jailhouse tapes over and over again, and psychiatrist Park Dietz asked Robert to reenact what he did the day he murdered Rebecca. He had first told Dr. Dietz that the second time he came to Rebecca's door, she was callous with him, and this made him angry, and he thought this was no way to talk to a fan. He became full of rage, took the gun, and shot her. However, when he is doing the reenactment, he shows that he has the gun behind his back before Rebecca even opens the door. This shows premeditation, which thankfully torpedoes the defense strategy of second degree murder and that the shooting was an act of impulse. I watched the reenactment and it's messed up. Robert looks like he's auditioning. His movements are really animated and over the top. He makes a show out of grabbing the gun from his waistband and pointing it. Then, in the most chilling part, he reenacts Rebecca's scream, which it's just so twisted. He is getting off on the attention and the fact that he did this.
I think beyond killing Rebecca, getting all this attention for the murder, like with reenacting it, made him feel even closer to her. Like the murder didn't only bring him closer to her because whenever anyone speaks about her death in the future, they'll likely be forced to mention his name, but that their shared notoriety put them on a level playing field in his sick mind, that is.
It's obviously all kinds of fucked up.
Obviously. As twisted as he was, Robert didn't seem to believe that Rebecca was waiting for him in the afterlife because he waived a jury trial so that the prosecution would take the death penalty off the table. Robert's defense attorney said Robert suffered from mental illness and parental neglect, and Dr. Dietz testified that he was a sick young man. However, Marcia Clark argued that Robert had killed Rebecca for fame, which was backed by the diary Robert kept, where he wrote about his need to become famous to impress Rebecca. This harkens back to John Hinckley Jr. and his obsession with actress Jodie Foster, as well as his identical need to impress her and become famous. John tried to impress Jodie by shooting at then President Ronald Reagan in 1981. Reagan received a superficial wound, and police officer Thomas Delahanty and Secret Service agent Tim McCarthy also suffered minor injuries. Even though Reagan's press secretary, James Brady, was shot in the head and his brain cavity was shattered, unbelievably, he survived. But sadly, he was left with slurred speech and partial paralysis and had to use a wheelchair for the rest of his life.
Robert's defense also said U2's song Exit influenced him to kill Rebecca. Bono, lead singer of U2, has said the song is meant to explore the perspective of a serial killer, and he was influenced to write the song after reading books by Truman Capote and Norman Mailer. Robert sat calmly in the courtroom until the song was played. Then he started rocking out in his chair, lip syncing and playing air guitar. It's disturbing to say the
Mhm.
least. U2 refused to play the song for many years because of its disturbing connection to the murder. Of course, the song did not inspire Robert to kill Rebecca. His mind came up with that all on its own.
But good on you too for not wanting to bring any more attention to Robert.
True. Marcia Clark said years later, what struck me about the case is the naivete of everyone involved. When Robert surfaced at the studio, the guard thought, it's a lovesick fan, and thought nothing more of it. So she never knew this guy was actually tracking her. My memory of it is no one assigned a great deal of significance to this guy, and that's understandable at the time. Probably 100 guys like that showed up and never appeared again and never caused a problem.
I don't blame the guard for her murder, but I do think few people were taking stalking seriously at the time.
Of course they weren't. I mean, marital rape wasn't a crime in all states until 1993.
That's just so upsetting.
So upsetting. In 1990, a year after Rebecca's death, California passed the US's first anti stalking law, which makes it a felony to cause another or their family to be in reasonable fear for their safety and carries a state prison sentence. Stalking is defined as repeatedly following or harassing another person and making a credible threat that causes the person to fear bodily harm. Los Angeles even has a specialized police unit that works with prosecutors, celebrities, attorneys, and security details to keep obsessed fans a safe distance from celebrities. Other states followed, and now all states have anti stalking laws. Like lots of other things regarding women, especially, and crimes committed against them, because let's be real, the percentage of women being stalked is higher than men being stalked. And in news, that will surprise no one. Women report that 94%, again, 94% of stalkers are men. Why is law enforcement so slow to enact laws that protect women? That's rhetorical. Women aren't in our society aren't valued like men are. Damn, I feel my 90s women's studies class is coming back.
I highly doubt that any of that material would be completely irrelevant now. Society changes, but at a fucking snail's pace. I would say I'm surprised that it took until 1990 for the first anti stalking law to take effect, but I'm not, especially given what you just said about marital rape. A year after this anti stalking law was passed in 1991, Robert was found guilty of first degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. California also passed the Driver's Privacy Protection Act in 1994, which prevents the DMV from releasing private addresses. Is it just me who feels like that policy should have always been in place?
I mean, of course it should have.
But here we are. In 2007, Robert was stabbed 11 times by another inmate. He survived this attack and remained in prison.
Yes, thankfully, he will remain for the rest of his life.
Thank God for that. Next week, we'll be discussing another case of when celebrity fandom turns to murder when we talk about Andres Escobar. All the sources we used for this episode are in the show notes below. If you'd like to suggest a case or theme for us to discuss, feel free to email us at terrifyinglytypicalpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us at terrifyinglytypicalpodcast on Instagram and at terrifyinglytypicalpod on TikTok. Leave us a comment below to let us know what you thought of the case. We'd love to hear your opinions.
See you next week.